A major change to our weather is about to happen, as a huge shift in the jet stream is beginning to split the United States into two very different weather patterns. This sharp divide will set the stage for repeated rounds of winter weather, especially across the northern and eastern United States. All of these changes stem from a strong ridge that is developing in the western United States. This ridge is working to pull very warm air into the western and central United States, leading to potentially record-breaking warmth later this week. At the same time, the eastern third of the country is moving in the opposite direction, with colder than normal temperatures becoming increasingly likely as we head into mid-February. And believe it or not, a bigger driver is developing behind the scenes. A sudden stratospheric warming event is underway high above the Arctic, and that has the potential to disrupt the polar vortex as we move deeper into February. If this disruption works its way down through the atmosphere, it could weaken and slow the jet stream, allowing colder Arctic air to push south and linger. That opens the door to extreme cold outbreaks, very sharp temperature swings, and a far more active winter pattern across the United States later this month. We have a lot to talk about in today's forecast. And I want to begin with this large weather divide that is about to happen that will split the country between winter weather and spring-like weather. We are going to begin with our jet stream. These are our upper-level winds that are steering our weather patterns across the country. Right now, we still have a large dip in the jet stream all across the East Coast. That is leaving all of that Arctic air still in place from the southern plains in the southeast all the way back up into New England. On the other hand, we do have a ridge that is beginning to form back on the west coast. And that's what's going to build a big heat wave as we go into the middle and end of this week. So by Tuesday and Wednesday, that large ridge will continue to build back in California and Nevada. While that's happening, we will have another large dip in the jet stream developing across the Great Plains all the way back toward the East Coast. This will be our next shot of snowfall for some of us. On top of that, we are going to see another strong cold front impact areas from New Mexico and Texas back into Maine. So it is going to be an extensive cold front as we go into Wednesday, all across the southern plains and the East Coast. By Thursday and Friday, this is where things get much more interesting. We will have a very intense ridge built all across the Rockies and the West Coast. This will basically create spring-like temperatures back in areas like Denver, Colorado, and Seattle, and even over toward San Francisco. On the other hand, we will have very intense cold dipping out of Canada once again for those in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. That cold air will reach down to Florida again. Areas like New England will be dealing with extreme cold and the threat of heavy snowfall by Friday and Saturday. So this weekend will be much more interesting as our jet stream is going to get much more intense. We are expecting a significant Arctic blast if you're in the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast by this upcoming weekend. The ridge will continue to stay very strong along the West Coast, and then eventually by the middle of February is when we think the weather pattern is going to get active once again, when it comes to big storm systems moving over the Rockies that could bring the return of some severe weather, perhaps even some big winter storms across areas like the Great Plains and the Ohio Valley. The temperatures are really where this large weather divide is the most intense right now, as we are dealing with some of the coldest weather that we've seen in over a year for some areas like Florida, and then back into New England. So today we already have many areas across the East Coast and the Mississippi Valley around 20 to 30 degrees below average. Eventually, by Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, things will improve just a little bit for some areas as we go into Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning. However, another strong cold front will make its way through areas from Texas back into New England. The most intense area of Arctic air will be centered across the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley in the Northeast, with some areas like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as low as 35 degrees below average on Wednesday. Temperatures will be extremely cold even on Thursday, all up and down the East Coast. For those in the Great Plains and along the West Coast, we're going to be feeling almost like spring in some of these locations, with temperatures as much as 20 to 25 degrees above average. Denver, Colorado is forecasted to have high temperatures near 65 degrees on Friday. It is going to be very warm over there. But next up is going to be another Arctic blast, and that's going to happen on Friday. And that's going to begin in the Midwest and the Great Lakes. Temperatures will quickly fall as low as 20 to 30 degrees below average. Saturday will be the more intense day, as this Arctic air is just going to explode, especially to the east of the Great Plains. The Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast will be the hardest hit by this on Saturday. Some areas will be as low as 35 degrees below average. Florida is once again going to be hit as well. It might not be as intense as the Arctic blast we've been dealing with this past weekend. However, it is going to be very cold back down in Florida by next weekend again. This cold weather again is really not going anywhere anytime soon. This is going to be some very intense cold again by the end of next weekend. This could also bring some big snow chances for some of you next weekend too. Over the next few days, our temperatures are going to be very cold. Even beginning with this morning, we have a widespread freeze across most of Florida. Areas in the upper Midwest and the Northeast are sub-zero for the actual temperatures. But Texas and Oklahoma, you guys are getting closer to normal again, with low temperatures in the 30s and 40s. Look at this. By this afternoon, if you want some warm weather, Florida will not actually be the place. It's going to be Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas. We'll have high temperatures in the low to mid-60s. All of Florida will only be in the 50s today. As we go into Tuesday, temperatures will remain very cold across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, back into the Northeast. Temperatures will continue to warm up Tuesday and Wednesday along the West Coast and near the Gulf Coast. On Wednesday, a cold front will move through areas in the southern plains. It'll be pretty weak in Texas, a little bit stronger in the Dixie Alley, and then much stronger back in the Northeast, where there could be a shot of snowfall on Wednesday and Thursday. Thursday into Friday, high temperatures will jump if you're back in the southern plains, as many areas in Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and even Mississippi will have high temperatures in the mid to upper 50s, even up closer to 70 degrees in parts of Texas. While that's happening, a significant Arctic blast will be winding up and thrown down into the Great Lakes in the Midwest Friday into Saturday. Temperatures are going to rapidly drop Saturday morning. Many areas will be sub-zero across Michigan and back into Minnesota, and also across the Northeast. Sunday will be very cold as well, all along the East Coast. By Monday and Tuesday of next week, that cold air is just going to continue to linger. So a large divide between warm and cold temperatures will be developing all week long. This also means our snow chances will be changing trajectory as well. Now, let's talk more about exactly who could see snow over the next 7 to 10 days, beginning with what is happening today. For the most part across the United States, this is one of the quietest weather days that we've had in a long time. We have a little bit of rain and snow back in the Pacific Northwest, some light snowfall in parts of Minnesota, Iowa, and the Dakotas. As we go into tomorrow, snow will become a little bit more widespread. If you're back in the Ohio Valley, as we will have a new low-pressure system developing underneath a very intense high-pressure system. This could bring some light to moderate snowfall from eastern Illinois back into Maryland and Delaware. Some showers, and maybe even an isolated rumble of thunder are on the table back in the Mississippi Valley Tuesday afternoon and evening. By late Tuesday, early Wednesday, snow will be falling across areas like West Virginia and even into North Carolina. But generally speaking, this is going to be very light snowfall. This is by no means going to be a winter storm around the middle of this week. By Wednesday and Thursday, snow could linger on the backside of that low-pressure system in the Carolinas. Obviously, many of you have already seen snowfall. I do not really expect this to be anything crazy. Maybe up to an inch of additional snowfall accumulation possible in North Carolina on Wednesday and Thursday, as all that cold air will still be lingering. Really, the big story for this week in terms of snow will be Thursday and Friday. We will have an Alberta clipper forming just off to the north of the Great Lakes. We'll begin with some snowfall in Minnesota and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan on Thursday. Then, on Friday, this Alberta clipper will dive down into Michigan and eventually move into the Northeast. This looks like it could at least be some sort of minor winter storm for the Northeast as we go into Friday. Some moderate to heavy snowfall will be possible, especially in the Appalachian Mountains. Right behind this low-pressure system will be that intense Arctic blast, which is going to drop temperatures very quickly. One of the concerns I have right now with this event Friday into Saturday is that our isobars are going to be very close together, which means anywhere on the backside of this low-pressure system, or even on the south and east side of this low-pressure system, could have some higher wind gusts, and that could lead to some blowing snow. If our snow is heavy enough and we see enough snowfall accumulation, I wouldn't rule out some blizzard conditions in some locations. Another concern I have is that there's already a lot of snow on the ground in the Northeast. We still have over a foot of snow in most areas in New England. So this is definitely a storm system that needs to be taken seriously by Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Even if we don't see a lot of additional snowfall accumulation, the winds will likely be very intense. On Saturday, snow will continue to linger around New England. The GFS model basically has a nor'easter, another bomb cyclone attempting to form offshore Saturday into Sunday, and that could cause some big problems if it were to transpire. By the beginning of next week, which would be our second week of February, this is where I think things are going to get more active and more interesting. I think we'll start to see the return of some larger winter storms. I do think we will see a polar vortex breakdown in the middle of February, which should allow for that winter storm activity and also another big Arctic blast. Over the next 7 to 10 days, we are going to be watching the Arctic very closely, as a stratospheric warming event is possible by the middle of February. If that were to happen, we could see that Arctic air get pinched down to the south toward the United States. Where that exactly happens, how intense it could be, and how cold it'll get in the country is all very uncertain for right now. But this is something that we'll be paying attention to very closely over the next 7 to 10 days, as it could have some major implications in terms of what our winter weather is beyond the middle of February. The stratospheric warming event I mentioned is particularly significant because it can completely disrupt normal atmospheric patterns. When warming occurs in the stratosphere above the Arctic, it weakens the polar vortex circulation that normally keeps the coldest air locked up near the North Pole. When this circulation weakens or breaks down, all that frigid air has to go somewhere, and historically, much of it ends up flowing south into North America. What makes this setup so unusual is the timing and intensity of the temperature contrasts we're about to see. Having 65-degree weather in Denver, while areas just a few hundred miles east are dealing with sub-zero temperatures, creates an incredibly unstable atmospheric environment. This kind of sharp temperature gradient is fuel for explosive storm development. The jet stream configuration that's developing is going to create a persistent pattern where storm systems can rapidly intensify as they move from the warm western air mass into the cold eastern air mass. This is exactly the kind of setup that produces memorable winter storms and extreme weather events. Another factor that makes this pattern particularly concerning is how long it appears it will persist. When these large-scale atmospheric patterns lock into place, they can maintain themselves for weeks at a time. The strong western ridge and eastern trough configuration we're seeing develop has all the characteristics of a persistent pattern. This means we're not just looking at 1 or 2 cold shots followed by a return to normal. We're potentially looking at a sustained period of below normal temperatures and active winter weather that could extend well into February and possibly beyond. The implications for energy usage, transportation, agriculture, and daily life across the eastern United States could be significant if this pattern verifies and persists as the models are suggesting. Thank you so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We will have another video soon as this pattern continues to evolve. Stay safe and stay warm out there.